Welcome to the Meta One Coin Report, exploring the world of private digital currency through the eyes of human rights and empowerment for humanity. Here's your host, Leanne Carroll.
Today's conversation is very interesting. We are talking with an independent journalist and crypto savvy enthusiast. We will be talking about freedoms and liberty and the art of living unbanked, using crypto as a currency, and also talking about gatherings of people who decide that they want to live in a free area, a free state, and coming together to live, to make it happen. If there were a state in the US that were living free and gathering people with the same mindset, would you go? Would you be interested in going? I sure would. And there is something that exists right now. It's called the Free State Project. It exists in New Hampshire. So let's bring on today's guest. Welcome, Joel Valenzuela to the podcast.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. You did get it right, and a lot of people never get it right. So congratulations. We're already off to a great start.
That's fantastic. You know, it's funny because the way that I have it written is Joel, and I know that you are Joel and Valenzuela. So I don't want to mix that up. I really want to talk about, you are completely unbanked and you have been for a very long time. Tell me about that process. What got you started?
Yeah. So the start to finish whole story thingy is first the why. Ever since I was little, I guess I was learning about, freedom, liberty. Like when you go through proper, I guess, civics education, as it were, you start in the US at least you should, if you're at a decent school, you learn that the country is founded on the principles of freedom, that we're supposed to aspire to be as free as possible. And then at some point you start learning about the history of money. And mommy, why does a dollar look like this? Or why does this? And then you go back. Well, back in the day, people use, shells or apples, a trade or whatever, and then rocks. And then they started making coins. And then they settled on a gold standard or a silver standard if you're in those countries. And then eventually you had a bank that then had, gold certificate and silver certificate. And then at some point, just now it's paper. And that part always struck me as strange. And if you get into, I guess, pro-freedom philosophy at all, you start to realize that there's a lot of people, a lot of great, thinkers and figures such as Ron Paul, who popularized the idea of we should never have gone off the gold standard. And so already you have this kind of appreciation for the fact that the money is not, this isn't the way money should be. This is what money became, and it's not necessarily the best. Also, I grew up in the north of Mexico right after the peso crisis. And I remember seeing my grandmother had a bunch of gold coins that were useless. They're like, what are these? They're the old pesos. Well, what's up with that? Well, it didn't work out, so they made a new peso. And now it's $7 to the dollar. I mean, it's way more now, but it was $7 to the dollar when I remembered. And then, it's actually not seven. It's actually 7,000 to the dollar, but they just cut off the zeros. And just all this shenanigans basically was from a very early age just imprinted in me that money's not this sacred thing, a dollar is always a dollar and things like that. And then of course over the years you see the exchange rate between two currencies start to change, and you realize, one is doing well and one isn't. I wonder what the dollar is not doing well against it. Just if you stand on a high enough mountain, you can see the curve of the earth or whatever. If you are old enough, you have enough gray hairs over here, then you start to remember when things were a lot cheaper. And then you start to think, why is everything more expensive? So basically all this came about to, I start realizing people are printing endless money. The government's printing a bunch of money to fund a bunch of things I find morally abhorrent, such as, wars, which, in recent news with the whole Afghanistan situation, a lot of people, I don't think there's anyone who thought that 20-year conflict was worthwhile, did the right thing. There's very few. And so much money went into that, and not, okay, they asked money and I gave them money, but they just made money out of thin air to do this stuff. And so I don't want that to happen, but then everyone just says this is a bad idea, not what are they going to do about it? So then I just thought, what am I going to do about it? What can I do to stop being a part of that system? And I looked around at, I believe Peter Schiff had a gold back debit card at the time for Euro Pacific. And I was looking into trying to get one of those. And during that time is when I decided to move to New Hampshire for this thing called the Free State Project, basically just an initiative to get all the people who believe in just freedom and want to do something about it to just move to one small location and then just live free and see how they can advance freedom in whatever way they find way they find that they want to. And so on the way moving there, I stay with a friend in Chicago, and when we split the bill over a pizza, he gave me his part in Bitcoin. And I'd heard about Bitcoin before, but it wasn't really sold on it, or I didn't really know too much, but I got some Bitcoin. And when I got to New Hampshire, I realized a lot of the Free State community was using it in everyday commerce. And after I sent it around a few times, it really clicked with me. Like, this is going to be the future. This is, before payment apps really became a big thing, back in 2013. I don't remember when, Venmo really took off, but it struck me that this is like digital gold you could send to anyone in the world at any time with no restrictions. And you can't have a centralized service that just provides it. Just works, and someone runs it. A bunch of things and people run it, but you can't just go and say shut down the Bitcoin and it works. So that's where I got. And I got a few more minutes of rambling in here, but at any point feel free to stop me and inject extra questions or flavor into it. Otherwise I'll just keep going. So basically after a couple of years of doing some odd jobs for Bitcoin and, I don't think I've ever bought any cryptocurrency. I think I've only ever received it for payment for goods and services. But after kind of dipping my toes in it for a couple of years, finally at the end of 2015, I decided, you know what? I'm never going to get there to get to where all the way using this stuff unless I just take a plunge. So I stopped accepting any fiat currency or, dollars for payment at the end of 2015 and decided I was only going to get paid in Bitcoin. And then, so within a few weeks, I got a job writing for Cointelegraph, which is one of the bigger cryptocurrency publications, and then did some other work, for example, for Library, which now has become quite the popular decentralized content protocol for sites such as Odyssey and things, people seeking to escape from YouTube censorship and stuff. But I did some work for them. I did some other things back in the early days. And in the middle of the year, about May of 2016, I think, what happened was someone somewhere forged a check in my name and just like cleaned out my bank account. And it was, I ended up getting it resolved, but they even like showed me a picture of like what it was. And there were just some random bank deposit slip that someone got. Didn't even try approximate my name or signature or anything. Just someone put some marks on a piece of paper and then they just took all my money. And I just thought, this is absolutely insane that a system works like this. And they said, oh no, don't worry. They reversed it all. And then they said, but your account is compromised. You need to close your bank account. I'm like, all right. And then they said, all right, do you want to open a new one? I says, you know what? I'm going to hold off on that one right now. And I just never opened my bank account back again. I was just like, I'm done with this silly system. I'm going to make it work however I can. And, I guess the rest is history.
That's amazing. It's been a few years since 2015, since you began this cryptocurrency process. What has changed in the usability of cryptocurrencies since then, mainly?
Yeah, so a lot of things. I'm going to speak a little bit protocol levels in the actual tech, and then a little bit on the adoption side of things, like what you can do with it. So in the beginning, it was really rudimentary as far as I could tell. When you had a Bitcoin wallet, and this is, some of this might be technical if some people haven't ever used this stuff, but just back in the day, it was simple in that if you had a Bitcoin wallet, you had one long cryptographic address. It was big numbers and letters and stuff, and that's what you sent and received money into. Like, this is, if you just give someone this or a QR code representation that they scan, they send money at this address, just like a mailing address, right? you got money, and vice versa. And the problem with that is it's horrendously not private because someone sends you an address and then they see where the money went and they just see your entire transaction history and balance forever. And anyone can see that. It's not just, the bank knows your stuff. It's like everyone. And that is pretty horrendous. That's just not going to work, basically. Which, fun fact, that's still the way Ethereum works today, and other coins like that have account-based systems, which, again, I'm waiting for someone to wake up to like, oh my gosh, why are we even doing this? This is crazy. But that's a different point. So what's changed since then is, first off, now every time you receive, you get a new address. And so I kind of explained it like a different, like you kind of receive a different disposable cup every time you want to get a beverage. Like you just get a new one and then you get a new one. It's like a single use address, and they all go back to the same spot. But if someone sends you some money, they can't see the whole rest. So that's the biggest usability thing that changed somewhere about halfway into the Bitcoin journey. But the other thing is, in 2016, especially towards the end, the Bitcoin blocks started to fill up. And that's the Bitcoin block size debate and, all the crypto politics around it. I don't want to get into that too much, but the end user experience is, so if I send you some money with a crypto, and this is, I guess the super basic stuff, it shows up right away, but it's not considered like final or confirmed. Like it's not yours until about 10 minutes when you get a block confirmation, as they call it. And so it's about 10 minutes of uncertainty, but you can kind of see if it's a friend, oh yeah, I got it. And you can just kind of not care. Merchants, on the other hand, that's a different story. Now that 10-minute time window got longer and longer and longer because too many people were waiting in the line. Too many people were trying to send. There wasn't enough capacity. And so now it's like 2 hours. Like I do remember like walking around a shopping mall waiting an hour or two for a payment to go through before I could complete a purchase. And I do remember having to skip lunch because I couldn't get a confirmation in time. And then the fees got expensive to where it's like, oh, if I want to send you some Bitcoin, it's like 50 cents now. I'm like, well, that's kind of a lot compared to what I was used to, but it's all right. And then it's several dollars. And then it starts to become like, I'm not going to buy a $5 coffee and bagel and spend $6.50 for it because I have to pay $1.50 in transaction fee. So that changed for the worse. Bitcoin got worse to use in a lot of ways. And now there's a whole lightning thing going on right now. And, it's still too new to be able to comment completely on that. But in 2016, at the end of the year, I was faced with the decision of, do I quit trying to live on crypto because I can't do this anymore? It's just not working for me. Or do I just quit it, or do I find another way? So I tried to find another way. And then if you go down the list on the market cap rankings at the time, which back then it was a much more, I would say, reasonable metric to look at because there were very few projects. Now there's just so many different tokens and stable coins and everything all over the place. I was like, I can't cross Bitcoin off the list. Next, Ethereum. Well, no one's using it to buy stuff. And also Ethereum became even worse later, like in the modern day. And then I kept going down until I hit Dash, which was in the top 5 or so at the time. And so I just switched. And so Dash is it's basically a honed in project around the original Bitcoin vision, which was to be peer-to-peer digital cash. And so the thing was in the beginning, technologically, mostly Dash worked like Bitcoin, but I could actually send transactions for a small fee and they'd get confirmed pretty quickly. Dash's blockchain confirmation time is 2.5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. So basically, I could send you money, you'd see it, and then for like a fraction of a cent, and that within 2-3 minutes we would be complete. It would be finalized. And so that was something I could work with. That has actually changed significantly to the modern day because back then there was a function called instant send where you could check a little box, and for an extra fee, like a 10-cent fee or several cent, I don't remember exactly what, you could have it confirmed instantly. But it was kind of clunky. Very few wallets supported that. It was, not everyone's, it just was like all things perfect. It would work, but it was like clunky. in, I believe, I can't remember if it was, I think it was in 2018, that became the default transaction type, which now means every single Dash transaction is final within about under 2 seconds usually. So if I send you a payment, there, you got it. It's permanent. Can't be reversed, basically. And of course, there's a lot more technical. There's a lot more, technical details to that beyond that. But the fact is, finally, we have something that's reliable that you can just send someone. It's very cheap and it's just done. You don't have to worry about it. And that was a huge thing. And there have been some businesses that have cropped up around specifically this use case that were like, well, we're waiting to get into crypto because this whole like transactions aren't final for 10 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. That's kind of not going to work in our use case. And now there's a few that are like, oh, 2 seconds, we can work with that. So that's been a huge difference, has been just it goes through instantly kind of a thing. And the next thing that I'm sort of waiting on is a good username type solution that makes it easier to send and receive than just, the long hashes. That's there's quite a few projects that are working on something similar to that. Of course, Dash being one of them, but Dash's thing is not public yet, and a lot of the other ones are very rough right now. Like, for example, they'll map to a static address, which basically means if you send to me, just say at Valenzuela, if that's my username, you send to me, you can then still see my entire transaction history. And that's just, again, that's not going to work at all. And so there's a few that, or for example, I can't make a contact list of my friends. I just have to like manually remember all the usernames of stuff that I send to, which is better than remembering the long addresses, but it's still it's still a step. Like if you lose your wallet and you restore your money into a different wallet, like all your contacts are gone. It just says you sent to these addresses, but doesn't say which usernames are behind those addresses. It's all confusing. So that's the next big step I'm like waiting on in like hopefully the coming months. We're going to start see some motion around that kind of thing. So that's the whole like whirlwind technological thing as far as how that's gone. Now, as far as usage, in the early days, it was very complicated and difficult to try to use stuff. And it's basically, there was a few businesses I knew of and a few individuals. It was mostly a lot of individuals that would accept Bitcoin for goods and services. There's like one or two like bar restaurant type places around here. And then there was a farm. And then there was, some individuals who, who could like help facilitate trades for me. And that's like locally here in New Hampshire, which is way more than the rest of the world at the time. That's for sure. And there was a few services like, I could buy something online. Overstock accepted it for a while. And then I could buy Amazon gift cards through like one service and maybe even get a discount on it. And so I could like make it work. It was pretty rough, but I could kind of make it work. And I did use some of those Bitcoin debit card solutions back in the day before they started all requiring like KYC and basically having like a bank account. There was a few that would say you got like $1,000 lifetime limit before you give your government ID and stuff. And so, but that loop is closed as far as I know. But so that's what it was like in the early days. And then now it's very much easier because first off, locally to me, there's, in the state of New Hampshire, within an hour or so drive, there's like several dozen in-person businesses that take cryptocurrency that I could just go to. Oh, if I want to get coffee and bagel here, or if I want to get a croissant over there, let me go to this place, get some CBD lotion from the vape shop here. Oh, there's a bar over there. There's another bar over there. And then there's a dentist, there's a tow truck, there's a few other places around that I know. And of course, the farm I've been buying all my organic produce from all this time still is taking crypto the whole time. And the biggest thing though is the services, the infrastructure around it. There's a few places that take cryptocurrency like in a completely direct fashion. But there's also a huge prevalence of, I would say like prepaid gift card type services, where before there was a few that say, okay, if you want to buy like $100 Amazon gift card from here, you could do that. Or if you want to buy, but now there's gift card services for almost every single for almost every single business imaginable. And a lot of them allow you to buy specific amounts of gift credits. So you're not like buying, you just have this big, like, you know, big wallet full of these old partially used gift cards. You're like, well, I got like $4 of Jimmy John's credit, and I don't think I'm ever going back to one of those. So whatever. The one of the biggest innovations of the usability thing, because I've been, you know, I live in a great spot to spend crypto, obviously, but I've been using tips and tricks and things along the way. But it's still like I have to. I made a video series on how to live on crypto, and I gotta update that. But it's still like, you know, it's like 7 video series of like try this, try this, try this. It wasn't like a one thing you could recommend until now. Until very recently, there was a new app that was released called Dash Direct that basically it leverages the whole gift card type thing, but because of the whole instant confirmations function of Dash, because of this, I can go into, I think it's something like 155,000 merchants around the country, and I can go in any one of those. Let's say I go to Chipotle for a burrito. It's like, okay, it's like 978, and I type 978 into this app, hit buy, it opens up my Dash wallet, I buy, and then I present a QR code, and they scan it, and it's paid for. So if I get it in a nice little tight time frame, it can be about the time as paying with a card at one of these places, exact amount, and you get a discount on it. And so that's something, this is the first thing that I can actually like take to the bank, so to speak, with normie friends. I can actually say, download this app, and then you can just go spend it and you save money. So now they have an incentive to actually own cryptocurrency. If they're not sold on it, they're not investing in it or whatever, they have an incentive to actually get more, have an incentive to spend it. And it's really actually easy to spend. And if you just practice a little bit, it becomes as easy or second nature as using a card, for example. So that's kind of where we're at today. We're all, as far as like mass adoption, we're almost there. I think by the time we're coming towards the top of this bull cycle, I think. This is just my gut feeling. But by the time the next bull cycle comes, I think it's just going to be over. Everyone's going to be using it. That was a lot of ranting. I apologize.
Actually, it was really informative.
For uninterrupted, just sentence after sentence.
That was fantastic. And it sounds like Meta One will be able to address all of those things, just like Dash. And it's nice to have more than one application to be able to move forward. And you mentioned KYC and credentials, that kind of thing. Is it possible to buy cryptocurrency in any space without fiat currency?
Mean without KYC or without fiat currency? Because those are slightly different things.
Yeah. Well, usually with KYC, you have to have, well, I guess it's just your name, address, driver's license number, that kind of thing. But how about fiat? Can you buy cryptocurrency initially without fiat?
Yeah. So I guess that depends on what you're buying it with, because most people, the only money they have is fiat. If you want to buy crypto, so I guess I've done that my whole life. If you call it buy crypto, because I've exchanged goods and services for money, for a different kind of money, and I'm already in there. Now, if you already have a cryptocurrency, that's when I liken it to plug it into the matrix. It's like once you're in, you're in. And once you have any kind of cryptocurrency, it's really easy to then go through the entire ecosystem. Like if I get paid in Dash, I want to swap something for, let's just say, we'll swap it for Litecoin for some reason. So I swap it on a system like, say, Thorchain or like Shapeshift or something like that. Then I get that. I'm like, oh, well, I want some of that Litecoin to turn into Ethereum so I can get into all this DeFi stuff. Then you just swap that over there and you get Ethereum. All of a sudden you got all the tokens. It just, once you're in, you're in. So that is really easy. The hardest part is getting your government issued currency, your fiat currency, into crypto. And you can do that quite easily with KYC. As in, if you give you sign up and give your identity, etc., to an exchange or other, AML, anti-money laundering law compliant provider, it's pretty easy. Now, the other way is always trickier. There used to be an ATM loophole where you could go to an ATM and buy small amounts and you would be okay. But right now, there are ID requirements on, I believe, just about every ATM. I think a lot of them you can just leave a phone number, for example, like not full KYC, and make a small purchase. But at a certain point, pretty soon that starts kicking in. The best way is, as always with peer-to-peer systems, is to do it peer-to-peer. If you go to a meetup, some guy, you just say, hey, I want to buy some, I want to buy some Bitcoin. I want to buy some Bitcoin Cat. I want to buy some Dash, whatever. And you have some cash, someone will probably trade it for you. And especially depends on the meetup and the culture, but that's really the main thing. There's a service called localcryptos.com that does a lot of those kinds of things. It has like a peer-to-peer trading for crypto, for fiat type things. The best as far as definitely not the best as far as user experience, but the best as far as decentralization or whatever. There's this service called BISQ, BISQ, that's a kind of like a BitTorrent style client that will hook you up with other people looking to make trades for crypto. And it's clunky, but it's not like, it's no KYC. It's not, you can't shut it down because anyone who's running one of these instances can kind of, keep the whole system running. And so there are still ways people can get crypto completely without, divulging their personal information. My favorite way, of course, which way too few people are actually doing, is get paid in this stuff. Do work online for someone who will do this. Just see who will pay you in crypto, and then you're in.
And that kind of leads me to bringing up the subject of recent legislation that passed in this infrastructure bill. There's some crypto wording in there that I think you've done a little bit of research on, probably a little bit more than me, but supposedly requiring all crypto users to register with nefarious 3-letter agencies.
Yeah, so it depends on what version of the bill gets through, if any, because there was, I believe, a Senate bill which had a few different amendments to it, none of which ultimately passed, and then it's going to the House where, we'll see what happens there. Hopefully, personal opinion, hopefully the entire bill does not pass at all, but we'll see. We'll see where we go with that. But essentially, it was trying to regulate crypto brokers and stakers, like if you are staking a coin for a return, miners, and DeFi outfits, other things like that. They're trying to regulate those as like licensed brokers. And so, it's pretty terrible, let's be honest. Another thing is, it's interesting it took them this long. It took them like a decade to catch up with trying to start regulating this stuff. They kind of pretended it didn't exist, and now it's everywhere, and they're like, well, now let's regulate it. And I don't think I do think it's very bad, but I don't think it's like an end of the road kind of bad type of a thing. I think it's something that will hamper a lot of business that's located in the US. But the thing about crypto is, and like, we've been, for the most part, running on these networks that were operated in the majority out of China for the longest time, right? A lot of hash power for the main cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, things like that. Most of those things were until this like mining ban thing that happened in China. Most of it was in China, and like no one even really knew it. And so if it gets squeezed in, China squeezed it all out, or a lot of it, and everything still works. So it's going to be one of those sorts of things where it's just going to be a pain for US citizens to get access to the newest and greatest crypto and use it. And it's going to be, more importantly, a pain for US businesses, because they'll just have to get out, deal with horrendous regulations, get out of the business entirely, or they're just going to relocate to some place like El Salvador that is put more explicitly pro crypto laws out there. And as far as like, will I still be able to use crypto in my daily life? I don't think that'll change in the slightest. But just the entire industry just like when you dam up a river, the water still flows. It just doesn't flow like right there. So if they're damming up the crypto industry, it's still going to be fine. People are still going to access it. It's just going to flow out of the country and give a lot of startups and countries and stuff a lot of extra leeway somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's a lot of countries that support crypto, like Japan and Singapore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's been interesting to watch. Japan has had an interesting perspective on this because the Japanese regulators have been really not appreciative of what are commonly called privacy coins, which is a weird, basically, label to apply to any cryptocurrency that has anything that makes it harder to read transactions. And from my understanding, a lot of that is because the direct translation of the word privacy has very nefarious connotations in the native language. And so if you just say like financial privacy in the US, no one cares. But if you would say a direct translation, it has a worse connotation. So Japan's been a little tougher for some coins to get into the markets there.
I wasn't aware of that. And I just have to do a little plug for Meta One because we are a private coin and we're run by humans. And we don't allow corporations or large trading groups to come in and drive the prices up or down or do whale dumps, that kind of thing. And really that's what they're doing with Bitcoin right now. It's almost like the idea of freedom and decentralization has been sort of diluted with all the Wall Street treatment that Bitcoin has had. I think they're even creating paper to represent Bitcoins. And so at some point, it could create some sort of big trouble, because what happens when all the Bitcoins are due and somebody has to pay out in Bitcoin, and you have all these hodlers that are holding onto their Bitcoin. There's only so many Bitcoin. Where are they going to come from?
Yeah, that's something that's a little concerning to me, I guess, the way the space has gone in that direction. I ultimately think the cat is out of the bag in terms of anyone can make a decentralized network. Anyone can make decentralized money now. Lots of people have. There's a demand for that kind of freedom out there, and where there's a huge supply of it too these days. There will always be enough of a supply to meet that demand. So I'm not ultimately worried. It's just in the short term, in the nearer term, it's a little more concerning. We have some bumpy times ahead because most of the excitement about cryptocurrency has transferred from direct usage thereof for a variety of applications to let's just hold on to this stuff and hope it goes up in value. And it's expensive to hold your own money, because let's say I invest, a few $1,000s Bitcoin and I pull it onto my hardware wallet. I take it offline to my little personal safe. And okay, well, that's going to be like $10, $20. It depends on what week you're trying this, but like $10, $20 fee to do that. And it'll take a couple hours at least. And like, all right, well, that sucks. And then whenever you want to move it back on to turn it in, then there's another like big waiting period and a bunch of extra money. So people have just left it on exchanges. And then when they hit the buy button, say, I want to buy some Bitcoin. And then they buy it, and they're just trusting that the platform has it. And that trust so far seems to be okay, but eventually, like, so Binance just had something go on where essentially Binance is the big king of the crypto exchanges. They had a lot of governments crack down on them for basically not fully complying with whatever financial regulation that they were supposed to, allegedly. And now they instituted a platform-wide KYC requirement before they let anyone just sort of email address or whatever, just create an account, start trading. As long as it's within a certain limit, you can do whatever you want. And now they're saying, well, we need your ID for everything. And I can imagine that's going to lead to a lot of people not being able to produce that and not being able to ever claim their funds. And I can imagine that leads to a lot of, Binance keeping those funds. And one can imagine what happens if you have like an insolvent exchange. At some point, could you find a way to just never give the customer, like they bought Bitcoin that doesn't actually exist, for example? Like I could definitely see that kind of thing going on, which is why I'm all about touching the stuff. I'm all about using it in your own capacity, not using these KYC custodial services or as little as you can, and just knowing what you have. It just, it's kind of like, oh, let's all be on the gold standard and then just trust that the central banks are keeping your gold somewhere, and oh, they're not going to just take the gold away for it and give you back the paper and never give you your gold back, like actually happened. Like, I mean, I think that that can happen with digital gold quite easily, so we have to be careful.
That is true. And Meta One coin is a gold back cryptocurrency, and it is verified how much gold we say we have. It's definitely there. And the nice thing about having a Meta One wallet is you can trade on the exchange directly from your wallet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you don't have to deal with that whole, oh, Binance locked me out of my account. What am I going to do? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you can even do savings accounts or
Mhm.
have a savings pool and stake your Meta One coins. So there's all kinds of ways you can benefit from having your coins on the exchange.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think we've seen. There's a lot of reasons why people have gone to the old financial system. I've stayed with it. It's not just because that's what they have. It's that there's a bunch of things you could do. Oh, you get cash back on this card, or oh, you get so much, ROI on this, and there's all these kinds of things you get. And so, up until recently, there was a lot of ways you could do that with crypto, but not natively. Like you'd have to, oh, I'm going to leave my Bitcoin on the exchange. I'm going to lend it out on Poloniex for trading. And then you just leave it there so that speculators can like use it to trade with. And you get interest on your loan, of course, but then it's as any loan, obviously there's risk to that. There's regulatory risk, there's risk of loss, there's all kinds of stuff like that. And so it's basically you're back in the old fiat system, even though you're using crypto. And it's good that like now you can find ways of taking advantage of those things that everyone wants, like you mentioned, staking, savings account, things like that, and being able to trade to take advantage of all that without actually going back into a kind of a legacy like system.
Right. And being able to, just to take it a step further, being able to use a debit card that goes to your wallet so that you don't have to do all the trading and the sidestepping with your crypto. That I can't wait for that.
For sure.
I think we're really working to make it as parallel to the banking system as possible, make it as private as possible, because whatever legislation is passed or isn't passed, requiring crypto users to use cryptocurrency on public exchanges, it doesn't apply to the privacy of the Meta exchange. And once you enter into the Meta exchange, you become private.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is a lot of people don't realize how important privacy is, or they don't really understand it because they're used to this situation where basically every transaction you make with a card, no one, it's that information is privy to kind of no one, but then the banks still have all your transaction history, everything. And then if they get hacked, there's a data breach, then someone else has all that. So it's just very much like, oh, privacy, I already got it enough until everything goes horribly wrong. And then I have none. And with crypto is a little bit of a different thing because by definition, every single cryptocurrency transaction has to have some level of public visibility because it's not a closed loop. It's not like a closed system. It's an open system, open participation. Anyone can run mining infrastructure. Anyone can stake. Anyone can connect. Anyone can send, et cetera, from around the world. So there has to be a lot of information just out there. Now, on the other hand, you don't want your private financial details out for everyone. And so if you're using something like Ethereum and you have a domain attached to your static address, and then everyone knows all the money you have, that's pretty horrendous. But then you go to the next level of, good old fashioned UTXO coins like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, things like that, where you get a new address every time now. So it's not super easy to tell how much you have. But if you actually are a blockchain analyst of any kind, you can start correlating those between themselves. And if there's enough payments, they can kind of figure out how much money you have. And you can't really do that with a bank, right? It's worse privacy than a bank to just do that. And then, of course, you have systems like CoinJoin, which are mixed coin mixing services that basically jumble all the coins together. So when you send it, people don't know where it came from. And that basically lets you, buy your coffee and they can't trace it or whatever. It basically makes it so that you have a good level of financial privacy. Of course, if your entire paycheck goes into like your one address and you then mix it up and send it other places, so it's not like you can hide that you're getting regularly paid that easily. That's like a different level beyond that, but it's all the important things of like, how much do you have at any one point, and how much who just bought a coffee, how much do you have, all that is just obfuscated, and that's a great consumer level of privacy. Then you go beyond that when you start going into the more encrypted things, where the chain and its movement, like the money and its movement, and none of that is public info. It's all encrypted. There's a bunch of decoys, for example, if you use something like Monero, or it's encrypted to where you basically have to have the special encryption key to be able to know what's going on for something like, say, Zcash. And that whole level is like, I would say super oversimplification, but like, completely dark. And at that, depending on your purposes, that might be more than you need. It might be exactly what you need. But that, and before that, the more consumer grade privacy type of thing, those are very essential, because they're going to become more and more essential as this becomes mainstream. People see you make a payment or two and start to figure out how much money you have. Then they start to figure out, where you live, so they can rob you because they realize you have a lot of money. And then it becomes, oh, this is worse than the old financial system now. And so, to the whole like privacy point, yeah, I think that we're in with all the, hacks and exploits and things these days, and the prevalence of tech in finance, I think we're going to see that privacy is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
I agree. And that's one reason why we put a big emphasis on privacy, to the point where we're integrating quantum proof keys, so no one can hack into your keys. Not even a quantum computer.
Yeah.
To trace you back or to look at your wallet.
Money has to constantly evolve because threats to it will constantly evolve. Just like counterfeiting and things back in the old days, and now we found a digital way of avoiding counterfeiting. And every other exploit, every other theft is, now we're evolving ways of getting past that.
So where do you think, say, digital money is going when the central bank digital currencies emerge? How will that affect the decentralized platforms? Do you see them integrating, or do you see them just operating separately?
So I think there will have to be some sort of a separation when you have, at the end of the day, if you have these central broker type things, like let's say a Coinbase, there will probably have central bank digital currencies on there side by side with the real decentralized good ones. But the thing is, once you have something that's, let's just say, like, the thing about a central bank digital currency is it's just a smoother, more unified ledger way of doing the exact same thing the banks are doing today. It's still a centralized issuer of the entire supply that can modify that kind of stuff. It's still there's still going to be reversibility of transactions at some level. Whereas, the bank will do it at this level. I don't know if it's going to be the banks in the future, or if it'll be just the Federal Reserve is going to be running the whole blockchain and then just seeing what they want to reserve or approve or not. I don't know exactly what level, but it's still going to be the same thing. And so it's not just oh, you can't use you can't use this without KYC. It's not just that. it won't work with decentralized systems like decentralized exchanges, because they take, you know, a certain amount of, let's just say they take a certain script that will, oh, when you trade this happens there. And if the rules are, well, the transfer goes through unless someone reverses it, it's just not going to work, because there'll be some sort of an exploit or something. It just, I don't think you'll be able to combine that with truly decentralized infrastructure. So basically, I I see the central bank digital currency thing as more of a way of fiat modernizing than a non-fiat system that's government controlled arising. It's still going to be fiat. It's just going to be modern fiat that's a little more, smooth and efficient. And honestly, I have to say, I believe that when central bank digital currencies become, or CBDCs, let's just say that to save on some syllables, when CBDCs become much more widespread, I personally am guessing that that will cause more financial censorship than we've seen. Because in the past, it's harder to censor people, because financially, because okay, well, you're doing a politically divisive thing, you have a bank account, they have to see, okay, who are you? They have to go through call up all their banking friends, say, hey, where does this guy have a bank account? Oh, it's Chase Bank. Okay, call Chase Bank, say, hey, cancel this guy's account. There's a little bit of a process to that. And then sometimes it's like, well, but then he has another account with over here. Like, but you just put a moratorium on every banking provider to do it. And it's a little more work, I guess. It's still possible, but it's more work. But in the future, if they basically have perfect data and perfect optics on where all of the money goes, because right now people don't know where the dollar goes. Like, I mean, how many government institutions have lost significant sums of money? Just, it's gone. It's not like, oh yeah, we saw it got sent out to here, we just don't know where that is. No, it just disappears, unaccounted for. And we won't have that under a central bank, under a CBDC type system. And that means that they'll be easier to identify who's at the end of each of these things and to shut them off from the top. Not even have to go to like PayPal and say, hey, this guy's shady, shut off his account. They'll just be able to shut it off from the top. And then as you see more financial censorship, then that's going to make a lot more people clamoring to be like me.
I do see a great migration with central bank digital currencies, and not only that, the points that you made brilliantly. I think because we will be censored, and maybe your clock radio, or they don't like something that you said on Facebook, or you didn't wear your mask walking the streets, they're going to cut your programmable money off for the bus stop, or for gas, or for I think that your privileges will be diminished, that kind of thing. I don't like to go draconian, but it sort of will ultimately lead there, which will cause a great migration to decentralized finance, which means decentralized finance will prop up, will defund the Fed, which is something that we've all been wanting to do.
Yeah.
And life will be happily ever after.
Yeah, I mean, there's never such a thing as happily ever after, but things will certainly improve. Things lurch. I think, progress lurches forward. It's not a straight line up. It's an up and a down, and up and a down, but it's lurching up as we go. And so, I mean, I also see that the central bank digital currency revolution idea is also just a trial run, like a test net for trying to be part of the decentralized systems. So, can you really imagine that, like Wells Fargo, I believe, just applied for a Bitcoin fund? So, do you really think that these people that control all the money in the world are just going to be like, we're not going to control any of the new money? I mean, I think that every single big corporation, every single government will own a lot of cryptocurrency. A lot of central banks will probably be running cryptocurrency nodes, either to just to broadcast their own transactions, or to listen in on the network on other things, or just to run a big part of the actual infrastructure. So let's just say, why wouldn't JP Morgan Chase have a Bitcoin mining farm somewhere? Why wouldn't they be part of that thing? Why wouldn't, uh, let's just say, the Chinese Communist Party, why wouldn't they run an Ethereum validator or two? Why wouldn't they be staking on that side? Like, I think at some point we're going to see a lot of the same old cronies kind of in on the new system. I just don't think they'll have the same power or influence as they did over the old system. So it's going to be a net, like, we can't expect perfection, but I think that we can expect a net increase in human prosperity and freedom.
Well said. Well said. I don't think the banks are going to go out that easy. The Fed won't go out that easy. It will be more of a sliding scale. But liberty and freedom are definitely the end result for humanity. The ability to live in abundance, to own your own money, unobstructed by those that wish to take it or manipulate it. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go?
Let me think. Well, first off, as I always say, it's great to just hear from this talking head dude who just talks about, oh yeah, crypto's great, I use it all the time. And it's great for that to be the end of the journey. I would say everyone listening, if you have not used cryptocurrency for a purchase, do it now. Not now, but like, within the next couple of weeks or something, but do it, because you don't want to be one of these people who's caught up only in the fiat world when it starts to really start shaking down. You don't want to just be like, well, or be all invested in cryptocurrency but never buy anything with it. So you're kind of struggling to know how to use it, and then the first time you purchase it, you might get scammed or something when you try to your first purchase with it. Like, you want to start building that muscle up now. It's not like, hey, do you want to take care of your health and get into shape before COVID hits, or like right when it hits? Like, it could help a lot of people to get your orders together, your business together ahead of time. So I would just say use cryptocurrency. I mentioned before, the Dash Direct app is just a really easy way for anyone to go out in any city in the US at least and just buy something. And that's just the simplest way I would recommend. But just anything. I mean, any coin you have, anything, just open up your wallet, ask someone, like, even, so let's see if you have a neighbor who has like eggs, like from a chicken, try to buy some. Hey, those eggs that, you gave me that one time, do you have more? I'd like to buy some. Can I spend crypto with it? I'll pay you more than it's worth. Just so I can say I did it. And just start building your local economy in a little way. Just get used to it, and then you'll learn a lot where you're at before it's kind of before you're in a tough spot. You'll learn kind of what you need to know. Is this going to work out for you ever? Are you just love it and you're addicted to it now? Like, you'll learn a lot of things just by getting your hands on it. So that's kind of what I'd recommend.
That's brilliant too. And I always recommend starting small for initial transactions until you get used to it.
Yeah.
So you don't lose a lot. And the other thing that you said, one thing I forgot to ask you about, when you talk to merchants, individual that have things to sell or services, how do you recommend they get started accepting crypto for their services?
Yeah, that really depends on the situation they're in. If it's a, like, just my guy down, he's an auto mechanic, whatever, it's like a sole proprietorship type business where the owner, and you could just, if they can be convinced, if they think that cryptocurrency is valuable, if they want to invest or something already, that's a great way to just say, all right, why don't you just accept it? And then, there you go. And so the way you do, there's an app that I like called AnyPay. And like, you pay anything, like AnyPay. And that's basically a little front end app that's really easy to just take crypto into. But you have to put your wallet address back end, right? So let's just say, I don't know, you have chickens, you want to like sell me eggs. I'd say get the AnyPay app on your phone or tablet, and then you just ring up the amount. I scan the QR code, I send it, bling, it says paid. We're all good. And it just goes into your your personal wallet. And so, of course, if you're like running a bit above ground business and are keeping track of all this stuff and want to keep the crypto, a lot of what I've seen people do is just take their own personal fiat and pay the business for the crypto sale that they got. So let's just say I buy a $5 coffee. The owner wants the $5 in Dash from me. So he'll put $5 into the register and just keep the crypto. And that's kind of how a lot of them do the accounting on that level. Now, if you don't want to keep the crypto, you just want to accept it, but you don't want to keep it, I would do the exact same thing, except on the back end, you can pair it with something like, let's just say, Coinbase. And so you get a brokerage account on something like Coinbase. You put in your little, let's just say you want to take Bitcoin Cash or whatever. You put your little Bitcoin Cash address into that AnyPay app I was telling you about. And then every single time someone pays you, it goes right in there. And then you just sell it and it goes to fiat. And then it's just right to your bank like that. There are some more sophisticated systems, but it's a lot easier for online things. Even though most people make almost all their purchases in person, it's still like crypto is like an online thing. But if you, there's quite a few things like, let's just say BitPay is one, or Coin Payments is another processor for online businesses that will just take it, and you can set up auto conversion options if you want to. And that kind of makes things a lot easier. Generally speaking, like, I don't know personally any businesses that operate fully on the books and have crypto like hanging out in their balances as a business. That might be a little bit of a tricky thing from, regulation in the US right now. So typically I see people, either the owner just takes the crypto personally and gives fiat to the business in exchange for it, right? So it just, the fiat never touches it. I mean, the business never touches the crypto, only touches fiat. Or on the other hand, even the owner doesn't ever touch the crypto. It just gets converted right away. So those are the two ways I kind of see it happen. I'm sure you could implement some system like that if you got a little bit more. If you had employees that wanted to get paid in the stuff too, then the employees could, put part of their paycheck into the business and get their crypto out of it. So that's just generally how I would do it if I was advising a business to do it. At some point, we will start seeing many more integrations into businesses, such as like point of sale systems and such, like actually into the main, like let's just say use Clover. You'll be able to have a little Clover plugin that'll take crypto right in there. There's a couple that they're working on, but they're a little weird. Or the Square, you have a Square tablet and then it goes into there. You use Revel, you use, Cake, or, could keep naming point of sale systems, but you get the idea.
And those are really good places to begin using crypto, getting adjusted to it, and beginning to decentralize yourself and becoming more free.
Yeah.
And living more with liberty. I'm really excited about the Free State Project in New Hampshire, and how there's a group of people who've decided that their state is going to be sort of deregulated, independent. You guys have very low taxes, very
getting lower all the time too, which is weird. It doesn't happen a lot.
The people that believe in this project are elected as officials and keep it honest. It's the way that I see people get together and assist each other. There's a great deal of entrepreneurship. It's very, very exciting. And I hope that people take a look at what the Free State Project is doing in New Hampshire and incorporate it in their area too.
Yeah, and it's kind of inexorably tied with the story of cryptocurrency adoption to begin with, because, for example, some audience members might recognize some of these early days names, but there was a guy, Gavin Andreessen, who was an early Bitcoin developer. He was the guy that when Satoshi left, he basically handed him the reins to Bitcoin. Basically says, "You run it, I'm gone." And so basically the inheritor of Bitcoin used to come up to New Hampshire once in a while, and he came on a libertarian radio show called Free Talk Live. It's based out of Key, New Hampshire. And when he went out for lunch with the guys, he said he gave them some Bitcoins. Like, this stuff's going to be huge someday. Here you go. I'll pay for my lunch in Bitcoin. Here you go. And it must have been like 2010 or something. It was like way back in the day. And then they started getting into it. The talk show host started listening, and they started talking about it, and one of their supporters and listeners was a guy called Roger Ver, and he heard about Bitcoin on this New Hampshire-based show, and then he became known as Bitcoin Jesus, and then later the Bitcoin.com guy, big in Bitcoin Cash promoter, and basically he launched a whole lot of those businesses. And then an early member of one of the local meetups around here was Charlie Shrem of Bit Instant fame from way back in the Mount Gox days and stuff like that, and the Silk Road days. And then Vitalik Buterin has been here as well, of Ethereum fame, right? The founder of Ethereum. And Eric Voorhees of Shapeshift, he's been into our meetups as well. It's like a lot of big names all can trace their, roots right here. In fact, the Harvey brothers started Lamasu, the first Bitcoin ATM company. They were here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and now they've since gone elsewhere, but it's still the roots of crypto are here. And so it's no coincidence that where people are radically into freedom, that's when people actually start building out what matters in crypto. So it's not a coincidence in the slightest.
I didn't realize all of that about New Hampshire. It has a deep history of liberty and freedom and decentralization. Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your story here on the Meta Podcast.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's been a distinct pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you here. And for those of you who might be interested in connecting with Joel, how do they do that?
So I go usually by my moniker, the Desert Links. Desert is in hot place, Links is in kitty cat. So I'm the Desert Links on Twitter, on just about every other place. Or you can look up my name, Joel Valenzuela, which might be a little bit harder than the Desert Links. And anywhere you can, just reach out to me. I run my own show called the Digital Cash Network, which is on YouTube and Odyssey and some other platforms. So if you want to look at the stuff I put out, you can go there. But generally, if you just want to see my incoherent ramblings online, then the Desert Links is a great place to go.
Fantastic. Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in looking at Meta OneCoin or joining the movement of decentralization, please visit metaone.io. If you're interested in becoming sovereign, becoming human, you can find out more about that at Universal Law. That's number 8, Universal Law, number 8.io. Thank you very much for listening. We always like to see your comments. Please share and like. And until next time, live freely and live abundantly.